Okay, good evening. This is a December 9th, 2019 meeting of Development Governmental Relations Subcommittee to Holyoke City Council. I'm the chairman, Pete Tallman, Mike Sullivan, Terrence Murphy, and Joe McGivern is with us. So thank you all for being here. Councilor Valentin checked in and she's unavailable tonight. The first agenda item is prior meeting minutes. We don't have prior meeting minutes, so we'll skip over that one. And if I get a motion to take two off the table, that'd be great.
So moved.
Motion made and
Second.
seconded to take item 2 off the table. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Order that in accordance with Chapter 40, Section 4A, the City Council approve an intermunicipal agreement between Springfield Water and Sewer Commission, City of Chicopee, City of Holyoke, and the Pioneer Valley Planning Commission, also known as PVPC, for the continuation of the Connecticut River Cleanup Committee. And with us is John Dijek from, and Bob Parent. So Bob's the city engineer. Mr. Dijek is with the Office of Planning and Economic Development. Gentlemen.
Thank you. A little bit of background on this. This is a 25-year agreement, which means that it has to be taken to the City Council for approval to authorize the mayor to execute this agreement. It is intended to replace an agreement which is 20-plus years old now, that was originally signed by the city, City of Agawam, Chicopee, Holyoke, Ludlow, South Hadley, Springfield, West Springfield, and Pioneer Valley Planning Commission. It was that agreement that created what's known as the Connecticut River Cleanup Committee, which is the organization by which the city has received funding over the years for combined sewer overflow correction projects. Between fiscal 1999 and fiscal 10, the city received over $3 million in funding through that committee. The committee membership has shrunk at this point because South Hadley, Agawam, West Springfield are no longer dealing with their own CSO-related issues, so the committee's now shrunk down to Chicopee, Springfield, and Holyoke. And that's why the makeup of this new MOA is only those 3 communities plus Pioneer Valley Planning Commission, which administers the program. Just as a point of information, from fiscal 16 to fiscal 20, more recent years, the city of Holyoke has received or will be receiving just under $1.5 million of state funding through that program. This is a big year for the city of Holyoke. We're receiving $1.05 million, which will be split between completing what's known as a long-term control plan, which is a plan by which we look forward for sewer separation. $651,000 of that grant money is going to the Jackson Street sewer separation project, and $260,000 of it is going towards sewer separation as part of the Front and Heritage Street project. So, short story is, this is the committee by which the city is able to work with the city of Chicopee and the city of Springfield to apply for and obtain grants that then are split amongst the communities and are typically over time fairly equally balanced between the 3 communities.
Any questions from the committee?
Yep.
Councilor Sullivan?
Yeah. Thanks, Bob. So it's a 25-year commitment. Does it cost us anything, or do we just receive money in?
There's an administrative cost. It costs us $2,000 per year to be a member. From my perspective, that's a pretty small investment to receive the type of funding that we've been able to receive over the years.
And why did the other communities drop out of it?
I believe when it was originally put together, I wasn't obviously involved 20-plus years ago, many communities up and down the Connecticut River were looking at their own combined sewer overflow elimination issues. And the city of Agawam, West Springfield, and South Hadley had much smaller issues than Chicopee, Holyoke, and Springfield, and have been able to correct those issues, so they no longer had any need to participate in the funding programs.
Didn't South Hadley just dump 1 million gallons of raw sewage in the river a couple of months ago?
I forget if that was the number, but I know they had an issue, and I believe that was related to some equipment failures at one of their pumping stations. It wasn't a combined sewer, but it was actually part of their separate sewer system, I believe, where they had some type of an equipment failure. So it still happens. You still, when there are problems on occasion, something fails, there may still be overflows to the river, but not through a combined pipe where that's handling both drainage and sanitary sewage.
Okay, so there's no guarantee of funding or grant money over the 25 years, but by being a part of it, we remain eligible for that, and it only costs us $2,000 a year?
Correct.
Wow.
And it's by no means limited to, right now, the funding that's being received has been part of the state environmental bond bill, which I think set aside a total of $7 million in the environmental bond bill the last time it was passed. And then that money has been allocated on an annual basis over the life of the environmental bond bill. Again, of that $1.5 million this year, that we're receiving the majority of that amount this year.
Councilman?
Thanks a lot for coming down, Bob. The funding you stated was for state funding. We're getting money from that 1.05 million this year, right?
That is the source of the funding currently. In previous years, going back to fiscal 10 and prior, back when Congressman Oliver was in office, he was very successful in getting federal monies allocated specifically to the Connecticut River Cleanup. So that was federal money that was passed through this committee. Here, these monies are currently state monies that are passed through the committee.
Okay, and with the 25-year commitment, is there still possibility to get federal money, or is it just state money?
The agreement doesn't specify where the funding comes from. It basically is an agreement that the communities are going to work together to obtain and then disperse funding if it's received.
Right, and isn't it true that over the years, pretty much every year, we've been getting something out of this?
Pretty much every year, yes. Again, this year is kind of a catch-up year, so we're getting 2/3 of the funding. Much more than Springfield and Chicopee this year.
Okay. Is there a time when this has to be, is it after the council approval, that then the mayor just sets up the agreement or signs the agreement? Is there a time frame with this?
There isn't. We're actually the last community to endorse it, so Springfield is already, their Board of Aldermen has already endorsed it, and the Springfield Water and Sewer Executive Commission has already endorsed it, so we're
At that point?
it's our
we have
time.
to do-
Yeah.
Okay, thank you.
Councilman McGivern?
This is a good year in terms of the split, but could you explain to us how the split is determined? Because there are years where we are, of the three communities, are not, anywhere near the majority or the split of, of the monies that come in. And what is the criteria that puts the three communities, in a position to be able to get funding?
The interesting thing is the allocation of funding is really established by the committee, of which Holyoke, myself, is a member, Chicopee has one member, and Springfield has one member. So we basically, as a group, we all have more needs than we have funding to get done. So it's not that Springfield's project is better than Chicopee's or Holyoke's or vice versa, but it's who has those needs, and we all have those needs, and then who has those needs in that current year. This particular year, because we're moving forward with our Jackson Street sewer separation project, we had more of a need in the current year than we might have had in the recent past 2 or 3 years. And again, there was a feeling amongst the committee, of which we're equal representative, that it was our time to get our fair share of those monies. So we keep track of it year after year with the goal of maybe not every year splitting it by a third, but over time maintaining more or less a 1/3 split. So it was really 1/3 split looking back over the past 4 or 5 years that set the amount for this year.
It sounds like you're describing a gentleman's agreement that will do the right thing between the three communities as time goes on. Times change, people change. What's the guarantee that we'll get our fair share if we're putting the money into this, and will we be better off going off on our own?
First, there's no reason we couldn't go on our own. If for some reason we were able to get a particular state or federal elected official advocating for the city of Holyoke by itself, there's no reason that couldn't happen. So this doesn't preclude us from doing anything on our own. You are correct that it is essentially, it's not really a gentleman's agreement because we take a vote, but we have a 1/3 share in that vote. So in theory, Chicopee and Holyoke could align together against Springfield or vice versa to try to, to push the vote in one direction or another, but we generally look at it and say, it's Holyoke's year, and that was the understanding this year. It's our year, and therefore, You know, it was essentially a true-up in terms of trying to balance the books over the past couple of years.
Are you telling us that it's working out fairly?
Absolutely, yes.
Okay, thank you.
Counselor Murphy?
Yeah, again, I think working in cooperation with Chicopee and Springfield make a whole lot of sense. I mean, the old industrial area polluting the river for all those years, I think we're probably more involved in that than some of those other communities that got themselves cleaned up quicker or had less problems to deal with. So I think this is a good cooperative thing, because obviously if we clean our part, they clean their part, we're all gonna be, it doesn't do us any good if we clean ours and Chicopee doesn't do theirs to a great extent. So I think it's a good situation. I understand Councilor McGivern's concerns, but clearly it hasn't happened in the past. And the only other thing, just for public record, because I know we're trying to make sure that people in South Holyoke are fully aware of the Jackson Sewer Project, which is going to take a lot of patience on their part, if you will. So can you just, I think we had talked about in the spring and summer of next year that the project would be really at full throttle and then being completed sometime late summer. Is that correct?
That's correct. The design's been completed for a number of months right now. We have one permitting issue with the Army Corps of Engineers that we've been told the final permit will be out in a matter of days. We have one easement issue that we're looking to resolve at the same time. We expect to be, we need to be pretty certain we can have those issues both resolved in a fairly short amount of time before we go out to bid. We're getting very close to that point that we realize that, you know, we may, for instance, may not have city council approval of the easement yet, but we know that we have a pathway to that process. Once we have that, then we will issue the documents for bidding, which will typically be a 30 to 60-day period to get the project in the street. We're coming up to really the best time of year to put a project of this magnitude. Once it goes out to bid, we would expect then construction to start in earnest this springtime, go through a full season and a half, most likely, of construction. So all of 2020 and at least part of 2021.
Okay, thank you.
Counselor Sullivan?
So why did South Hadley, Agawam, and Ludlow drop out of the program?
They had, going back 20-plus years ago, they still had some combined sewers, but not anywhere to the magnitude that any of the city of Holyoke, Chicopee, or Springfield still has. So they had a couple of small locations where they were able to complete a couple of projects of a much smaller magnitude than the cities and eliminate their combined sewer overflows. So therefore, they're no longer have a need for monies to eliminate the combined sewers.
Bob, so, okay, once you're done with the construction in 2021, then what happens? I mean, how far along are we to resolving our combined sewer overflow?
We, like our neighbors, have many years still to go. Many years, and I'll be honest, many millions of dollars still to go. We are in the process right now of finalizing, of drafting what's known as a long-term control plan, which is probably a 20 to 50-year plan for how the city will resolve those issues long-term. That we're actually under EPA consent decree to come up with that framework of a plan. And then, in all likelihood, down the road, there'll be requirements to start implementing pieces of that plan. But it's tens of millions of dollars, and it's tens of years before we'll be in the same situation as West Springfield, Agawam, or South Hadley.
That's depressing. All right, back to the here and now, Heritage Street. I'm presuming that all the work's being done on Heritage Street now is not gonna get ripped up, right?
That is correct. As part of the planning, as I understand it, long before I got here, there was a new water main that was installed by Holyoke Water Works and Heritage, so there's brand-new infrastructure
Yes.
there. We constructed brand-new separate storm drain lines, So now the storm drainage on Heritage Street, instead of going to the wastewater treatment plant, will now go to a new outfall that was constructed on the second level canal. You may have seen that. Likewise, the drainage coming down off of Dwight Street from Maple to High down to the second level canal will not go to the treatment plant any longer, and the drainage coming off of Front Street will also no longer go to the treatment plant. So, yes, that will be, it's all been planned out, and it's all being implemented in a manner so that we do the deep underground work and we work our way up.
Right, and then what about Chicopee and Springfield? I mean, Chicopee's really been, to my eye, they've been really kind of moving this along, so do we know how far along they have to go? Because we may get our wish and we may be going it alone anyhow, so where are they?
I know they're still looking at decades of work ahead of them. They have spent much more money than Holyoke has to date. It's in excess of $100 million. I don't know how far. I can't tell you if it's 110 or 150, but it's $100+ million that they've spent to date. But they still have a considerable way to go. Same thing with Springfield, City of Springfield, Springfield Water and Sewer Commission. They have, they're spending, as an example, $75 million just to build a new pumping station and pipeline to cross the Connecticut River. A single project is a $75 million project. Staggering, yeah.
There you go. Okay, any other questions from anybody? I don't think so. All right.
I'll make a motion that we approve the municipal agreement.
Motion's made and seconded to approve the intermunicipal agreement among the aforesaid parties. Under discussion, hearing none, all in favor?
Aye.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks, Bob.
Marcos, you want to come in? Welcome back. I guess we'll get a motion to take item 3 off the table.
Motion to take item number 3 off the table for
Second.
discussion.
Made a second, take item number 3 off the table on the motion. All in favor? Aye. Let's see. City council declare, sorry about that. City council vote to accept an offer of $10,000 from Alfred Shattelroe to purchase and redevelop 47 Chapin Street, which is a vacant 2-family house on a nearly 7,000 square foot lot. And the property is zoned DR. Oh, great. So if we had our way, we could put a marijuana shop in there. That'd be perfect for Elmwood. I would love that. But that's just an editorial. Okay, so Marcos, Mr. Dijak, welcome. Why don't you tell us what's happening?
Thank you. The property at 47 Chapin Street was declared surplus at the end of 2018. We subsequently put it out to request for proposals, and unfortunately we got no responses in our first attempt earlier this year. We issued a second request for proposals more recently and received 2 responses. One of them was selected and is before you from Mr. Alfred Shattelroe. He's a known property receiver, so he works very often with residential property at this scale. 47 Chapin is a 2-family unit. The plans by Mr. Shattelroe are to invest $166,000 into the property. He would replace the roof, windows, all major systems inside the house, and refresh it on the outside as well. They take down the garages in the back, which are in poor shape, and remove some of the asphalt as well in the back. This is approximately a 6-month project for rehabilitation, and at the end of the project, he would maintain it in his portfolio of rental property. So, given the very detailed nature of his proposal, even down to what he already had estimates on what some things would cost, his reputation as a receiver with vast experience at this scale, we thought it was very advantageous to move forward with the sale.
Well, you know, we're gonna ask, so what was the other, who was the other bidder? What was that amount?
The other amount was $1,000 from the owner of Western Mass Demo, who is looking to start doing property rehabilitation as well.
Okay, seeing how we probably didn't, we issued one RFP when?
Was it March?
Early 2019, January, February.
And when did we get this, when did we issue the second one?
It was September.
Okay. So, in thinking that, it seems like there's not a great likelihood that we'll get anything better, right? I mean, $10,000 is small, but, you know, the amount of investment sounds pretty good. So,
Yes, the amount of investment is the real get here, right? Like when we inherit these properties, they are, usually we've inherited them because someone has stopped paying their taxes because it's not worth it to them to pay their taxes, right? They have to invest a significant amount in these properties. So this would be a complete refurbishment of the property, which is the great advantage of this. Plus, there's some, there is some consideration to the city, which is not always something that we get, right? Because the properties are underwater.
right, and then what, so if we do convey it out, I take it, do we have our standard reverter clause in there? Would do
We
that?
always do. We put that as part of our request for proposals. The importance of the reverter clause is we don't want people buying city property just to speculate on it, sitting on it, not doing anything. When we come here and we describe what the proposal is, we expect that that's what we're going to hold them accountable to, and that's why there's always a reverter clause.
Yeah, right, I just like to say, because I know we're gonna get that question at some point, right? And then, but we've had reverters out there for years and years and years and years and years. So, how will this be monitored, that the development project goes forward? I mean, so Mr. Shattelroe, I don't know the gentleman, but you're confident in his projects? He's been a receiver.
If I could add, I double-checked with the Board of Health, the building commissioner, and the city solicitor, who all have very positive recommendations for Mr. Shattelroe. He couldn't be here today. He's represented by Attorney Wilson, who is here. But I was at the inspection when there was the ability to inspect the property. Mr. Shattelroe came in with one other of his partners, and they went thoroughly through the house, noting everything that needed to be repaired. So I think they had a pretty good grasp of the magnitude of the work needed there, and submitted a very thorough response.
Maybe his other projects, John?
I believe there's a property in the flats on Center Street, and I know he owns a house on Suffolk Street that all seem to be in good standing.
Did he procure those how?
I'm not sure. I think the Center Street and the flats is a receivership. The other one was a private acquisition. I don't have much background on either of those, though. But I do know from the city solicitor's message to me was that he's taken difficult properties and done a very good job with them.
Okay. Yeah, that's I know I've been hearing about that since almost the day I walked into office 8 years ago, so that house has been sitting there dormant. So it's, that neighborhood's, that neighborhood could definitely use some attention, for sure. So I'm hopeful that this will help. Councilor McGivern.
Marcus, can you explain receivership? I mean, we're familiar with receivership, but typically a receiver is appointed by the holding authority or by someone, that looks to get a property, taken care of. And I think the city's worked out well with receivership in the past, but it's this person answered an RFP. So how do we call it receivership? Let me clarify. I'm not calling this receivership. I'm saying that Mr. Shattelroe has plenty of experience through the receivership program. So, I know you know this, but just as we're having the public conversation and people viewing and hearing it, receivership is a program through the courts where when there's a derelict property and the host city of the property can prove that the owner is not doing a good job keeping up with health and building code,
The city will request from land court that the court appoint a receiver of the property. So the site control of the property is provided to a receiver that comes in and invests in the property, gets it up to code, fixes any deficiencies to the benefit of the city, to property values, and also any tenants that are there. Then the value of the investments gets liened on the property. So for the original landowner to gain control again of their property, they have to pay back the lien. So that's how receivership works. Mr. Shattelroe and others acting as receivers, the experience that they would get is quickly going into a property through a court-appointed process with a lot of oversight and making sure that code is followed and upgrades are done. So that's his background, and that's what I mean by he has that experience. He brings that to the table in this instance. You're right. This was a request for proposals, which we circulate amongst the receiver community because they have this type of experience.
Thank you. Thank you for clarifying that. I understand better now. The economics make sense. Certainly, I will vote in favor of it. Marcus, just on the reverter clause, I agree with what you said, but there's also another reason for a reverter clause is we need to expect that the proposed investment is made before the property could be resold. And at what point will the city sign off on that?
I don't have the clause in front of me, but I don't think it contemplates the resale of the property.
Well, if someone buys a property for $10,000 and in a month decides to sell it for $20,000 or
All right, yeah.
$50,000, there's got to be a red light right there.
Right, yeah, no, that would be something, that would be totally speculation. That would be what we're trying to avoid. We're doing the sale so that the investment happens. That's
Okay.
correct, yes.
But at some point, we got to.
I thought you meant after the investment, resale.
No.
Okay.
I just want to make sure that the investment takes place before.
Correct.
It's, back in the private sector fully. And certainly, like I said, the economics make sense, but we do have to protect our interest.
Right, yes, that would be a violation of the reverter clause if you're just reselling it and doing nothing.
Thank you.
Just on the reverter, we will have the acting city solicitor in here. I filed an order, I can't remember when I did it, 18 months, 2 years ago. And so we have her come in every 6 months to give us kind of an update on what's been happening with the city's receivership program. And that's been very helpful for this committee. And, to the extent that the public tunes in, I think they'd be very encouraged and enthused about what what's been happening with receivership. So we started that when Kevin was the president. I know Councilor McGee, Councilor Breslin, myself, a few other councilors really got behind it and pushed it forward because we saw the good things that were happening in Springfield with that. So we'll get another 6-month update from Attorney Barnes when she emails me. We'll put it on a future DGR agenda, maybe for January. And so I think that'll be a really interesting thing for the public to hear about. What's owed on we took it in tax title, I presume, in this property, and so what? I shouldn't presume it, but I'm pretty confident that's how we acquired it. What's owing or what was
This,
owed to the city of Holyoke?
this, at the time of the taking, there was a total of $36,691 owed on the property. The majority of that was interest. During the tax title taking, the principal amount was about $14,000. And it was taken in 2014.
Yeah, so, yeah, it's taken in 2014, John, and so now it's 5 years later. Right, okay. All right, well, I guess it's good news. Council Tallman.
Yeah, thanks for coming down, Marcus. And I know with the city solicitors comes in and gives us an update on properties. Do you have any, as of now, do you have a few other properties that are actually, ready for RFP process? I mean, we had no other one tonight, I know, but I mean, other than that, are there some like waiting?
We have several in different parts of the process, some that this committee will take out in a future meeting. We have a couple others that we're going to be issuing as an RFP, yeah.
1919 West Glen, 1094 Hamden, those are.
Those are a couple, yeah, I know we did those as surplus
19
property.
West
Yeah.
Glen, that's exciting. Well,
Yeah.
you guys turned that, I really appreciate that.
And Hamden
You
Street, I
worked
was
on that
gonna-
one,
yeah.
Marcos.
Yeah.
We turned that one around fast.
Yeah, we're trying to dedicate more time to just have a natural rhythm to these things and take them up as packets internally too, because it's, there's an economy of scale there,
Okay,
doing the whole
Yeah,
process.
That's my concern. I see it, that we just did that one a few months back, and that's my thought, is to try to get these moving quicker so we can get them, not wait 5 years or 6 years to put a property up for RFP and get it back on the tax rolls. And I know there's reasons for that, but
And that's why you're starting to see like a group of 4 orders at the same time, or 3 orders come in for sale, because from a staffing point of view, as you can imagine, there's a lot of stuff that we do. Getting the city solicitor, head of DPW, staff from my office, and other offices together to evaluate these things just for one property is less efficient than doing 3 or 4 at the same time. So we try to move them that way.
right, and for the public, if there's anybody out there that's aware of properties near them, that, to contact the ward councilor and at-large councilor, so we can get that to the city officials and to you and maybe the tax people and treasurer, so we can get these properties, quickly turned around. Because that's important to get these back on the rolls and get the tax money from.
Yep.
Thank you.
Yeah, and I think that's been happening, Pete, so that's how 47 Chapin and 19 West Glen. Yeah, they came on pretty fast. However, they came on, we just brought it to their attention, so or somebody brought it to my attention, we moved that along. Oh, yeah, go ahead, Councilman.
Real quick, Mr. Chairman, I noticed that all the properties in Ward 3 go quicker, but, that's just an editorial comment.
Well-
Good ward counselor there.
Well,
Um,
nobody makes more editorial comments than me, so you're entitled.
Is it safe to say, or maybe I shouldn't say it this way, let me ask, are these properties, the properties we're talking about, skipping the auction process?
This one did not skip the auction process. We actually put it out to auction, and it
Okay.
had no responses.
So it's 5 years, but it did go through the auction process first, failed, and now we're,
At the very least, in 2017, it went through the auction process, and it garnered no qualified auctions.
okay, thank you.
Well, that begs the question, are we gonna have another auction, or should we have another auction? Have we conferred with the city treasurer? Has the problem property group, brought this up on a recent agenda, or what's?
I know that there's when you get an auctioneer, you have to pay them, and you need to have a certain amount of scale. So we've been trying to get them in these lumps of packets, right? There is, I guess you can move a bigger package quicker by an auction, and particularly if they're kind of homogeneous goods, right? If they're single or two family homes, there's a broader market for that than a more complex site. But we've been chipping away at these with this method, and unless we're open to feedback if there are particular complaints.
No, I just think that, I think we had the one auction that I know of, maybe there's a second one, but I definitely attended one, but I haven't really seen, whatever the most efficient way is, I would hope that the problem property group would make that determination, to get them.
Yeah, if I could
Back
share
on the tax rolls is
my
the
opinion,
goal.
I can't speak for everyone involved, because there's a lot of people who do more work than I on the auction stuff. And from my perspective, I think part of the challenge with the auction is on the front end, it moves quicker. Cost aside of having an auctioneer or whatnot, but it doesn't necessarily invite the highest quality. And so what we've seen is, all right, now we have a winning bidder, but then you have to prove that you have a development plan that meets our basic standards, and it's a challenge sometimes. And so after the cameras are gone, and after we pat our backs and say, okay, great, we got this result from the auction, the following up with the folks, sometimes it just leads to suboptimal outcomes. And so having an RFP process on the front end, it may take more time on the front end, but I think it leads to identifying someone who's going to actually do the project
Yeah,
much quicker.
we've certainly seen that, but Springfield has had a pretty consistent pace of auctions, because I see the ads regularly. I wonder if they have any feedback, but at any rate, Council Sullivan.
Thanks. Marcos, like this one's, 4 or 5 years old. How many are stuck back in the quay? If we were to just pull the handle now, how big is the backlog?
I don't know what the backlog is for this one, for example. We were trying to get it out through auction and it wasn't successful, so as soon as it was put on our plate, we got surplus and it was RFP'd. Just a handful, I would say.
Yeah, I don't think it's too significant. I think part of what we see is we have a few that come back more than once through the RFP process. So we're doing the same 1, 2, and 3 times for a variety of reasons, but I don't think the backlog is that significant.
Well, what I'm also curious, are there some that are still out there in the queue waiting to come in, where the tax collector hasn't foreclosed on them because of the backlog, the stuff that's already in the system that's not moving through?
I couldn't say like how many properties are like behind on taxes, for example. I don't have that information with me right now. But I could certainly ask that of my colleagues.
Well, how about just in the problem properties group?
Sure, yeah, no, I mean, that's what I mean. I can have someone forward you that information. I don't have it.
But there could be, I mean, are we thinking there's a half a dozen more out there like these, or are there 50 or 60 more out there like this?
So it depends on what you mean by like these. I mean, if it's like these that we know that we own them, it's not 50. It's probably less than a dozen, if that. Probably less than 10, yeah, at this point. But if it's properties that there's a speculative nature of to this, right? Like, so it may be arrears and taxes, but they come in and they pay their taxes, so it's no longer an issue. So it's, what's our prognosis, really?
Yeah.
Okay, any other questions? Hearing none, I guess we'll take a motion.
Make a motion to accept the offer of $10,000 for this property and,
Second.
Motion's been made and motion's been made and seconded. Under discussion, hearing none on the motion to accept the offer of $10,000 from Mr. Shattelroe. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? None. Okay, so we will recommend that for approval. We thank Councilor Wilson for being here with us. And, all right, and, let's see, we'll get a motion to take item 4 off the table.
motion to take item number 4 off the table for
Made and
discussion.
second to remove item 4 off the table. All in favor?
Aye.
Item 4. Let's see, City Council declare 712 to 716 Dwight Street as surplus property available for disposition. Let's see, August 2019, the property was awarded to the city via a land court decree with a final judgment recorded in the Registry of Deeds. Property is zoned limited business and has an assessed value of $246,300. And with us again are Mr. Marrero and Mr. Dijek. Gentlemen.
Thank you. So this is in order to declare surplus a property. The city foreclosed on it in August of this year. We moved forward in order to declare surplus so it can hit the market as soon as possible. It's a 4-story building on Dwight Street, the block before the post office. 8-unit apartment building. It has in the first story, it's kind of built out for commercial, so it has the potential of being a mixed-use building. What's also interesting about this property is that the property right next to it is vacant land, and it's contemplated in the urban renewal plan for aggregation and development, potentially even with this property. So our intent is to, hopefully you agree, and this can be declared surplus. We would market this together, the building and the land, similarly to what we did a couple of blocks up from here on Pine Street. There's a 4-story, 8-unit apartment building on Pine. It's 123 Pine Street, where we're combining it with the land next to it to have some green space and off-street parking. So we would try to do the same thing here, and put it out for sale. See what responses we get from the market.
Well, boy, I'll tell you, that open space has been open space for a long time, and that path that goes diagonal across a lot, that looks like it's been there since,
Yeah.
the Native Americans roamed the land here in Holyoke. I mean, that is a well-worn path. That is, like, seriously part of the scene. Okay, so, though it's not on the agenda, it's the abutting building. What's happening with that? It's got a very bizarre name, that abutting building had the fire to it. I think it begins with a U.
Urania or something?
Urania.
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 Yeah.
Pretty freaky. I like it though. But does that building have any?
I'm surprised I remember the name.
Oh, it's so unusual. I'm not surprised you didn't remember. Is that building?
I don't have an update on the building. I know it's
And
gone through a couple of
Some of the
phases
feedback I received was that there is slow, steady progress happening there, so it's moving along.
Okay, but it's privately held.
Yes.
Yes, and so I assume they're paying their taxes, and I would assume that, but be sure. Council Sullivan, you want
Yeah,
to speak to that?
Yeah, I can help with that. I went down and sat in the parking lot behind it for about half an hour this afternoon to see what was going on, what kind of activities were going on in the abandoned building, but as well what was going on in that building. And there is work ongoing, and even driving down tonight, I took a look behind it. They're keeping it well lit, and it is progressing, although slowly, but
Yeah,
it is-
actually, that's
it
great
is-
news.
It is happening.
That's great news, because, that post office, I mean, I tell you, I don't know who designed that, but that's like a jewel. The way that's lit at night, it looks incredible, and you throw in the Veterans Park, and then the new juvenile courthouse, Matt McDonough's building, right there. That got off the ground pretty efficiently, in my mind. I think it took less than a year to build it. I mean, not much less, but they turned it around pretty quickly. So if you get the building, whatever it is, the U building, get that thing together, and then that lot, that would actually provide some relief. Then you have the YMCA still there, solid as a rock, right, Joe? I mean, solid as a rock right there, and then just that disaster that now I see we have Walnut Street reopen, right? So people can sort of traverse that area, right?
Part of it, yep.
Yeah, well, I mean, at least you get by, Terry. I
Yep,
mean, that was the
yep.
order you filed. I mean, that was a
Yep.
darn good order, and we
Yep.
kind of went off the deep end a little bit out there, but at least we get those streets open, right?
Yeah, they can drive there now.
So that's somewhat encouraging as far as I'm concerned. All right, any questions about this, Councilor McGivern?
I think Councilor Bartley makes a couple of points, Marcus, that are important. I know the redevelopment authority is working, and you just noted on not just a vacant lot here, but on this entire corridor, and it's a gateway corridor. And besides the YMCA and what's going on in Walnut Street, Picknelly just made a sizable investment in the new juvenile court, which I believe abuts this property, or it's close to abutting the property
Yeah, real
in the
close.
alleyway.
Real close, Joe.
Yeah. So I think it's important that we, both the vacant lot and this building is moved forward as quickly as possible. Well, how long has this been vacant? The building itself? I'm curious as to what condition the roof is in, and if it needs to be shored up before we find someone to buy it.
I don't have an answer to that. I
Yeah,
don't know.
it's been at least several years. I think part of the challenge was this was an occupied building and many years of challenges with the previous property owner. And in my questioning some of the other inspectors and the city solicitor about this property, the thinking was, let's take this building now. We've tried everything we can to resolve with the current owner. There was no, that was not going to happen, and why there's still viability. But just like with Pine Street, we can ask the building department to check the roof, but message was it's a still viable building for redevelopment, and let's turn it into something positive now.
And it could be, but I think the first thing you want to do is make sure the roof is not leaking, or it'll quickly go downhill. Have you had any contact with the Historical Commission? There is a little bit of history in this building that I think we do need to look at, and it was called, or it's a legendary cafe that served a lot of people who worked in the post office for years.
What was the cafe, Joe?
Well, Ozzy was the bartender and the owner, you know, so I think you know, David.
I don't know.
Driscoll's.
Oh, no kidding. Driscoll, there you go.
They might give you a hard time, I'm not sure.
Yeah,
Although they let the bud go real easy.
and to your
They sure did, didn't they?
where you may have been going with the question. So yeah, we would coordinate with the building department, the Board of Health. As you know, the vacant building registry fees goes to a fund where the city can help secure property. And so Jose and the building department is very, very good at doing that when we bring something to his consideration. And you know, sometimes doing something for very low money can save us a lot of money in the long term.
Okay, all right, this one, I think I saw a pretty significant number. Tax taking amount 481,206.
That's correct.
All right. Counselor Sullivan.
So how many years does that represent that it went without any taxes being paid?
I don't know if it was fully taxes not being paid, but it goes back about 2 decades.
20 years.
Yeah, of some years of partial payments. I received the printout from the treasurer's office, and about 210 of that is principal of the total. The rest is in interest. Yeah, big number.
Well, this is what I was alluding at with the other. I mean, basically, it's taken us 20 years to close on this to take this property.
Up until a few years ago, it was an occupied building. I think everything was trying to be done to, maybe it was a receivership candidate. It might have been not been an option at the time. I just don't know.
The taxes per year on this building were $5,000 a year?
That seems low.
Yeah, no, it was,
That seems kind of
for example, in 2017, it was 12.5, but,
You're saying they did partial payments in some years?
yeah.
But how many years can you make a partial payment, and you're just getting further and further and further behind each year? And there's just no line drawn in the sand as to how long this continue until it becomes a $250,000 or a $500,000 lump. This is what I'm alluding at. How many more do we have lurking out there like this? They haven't reached the problem properties group yet. They're still sitting in the tax collector's office. Is that what I'm understanding then?
Well, I mean, as I said, I can get you a firmer answer. I don't have the answer on how many like these there are.
Okay.
Counselor Murphy?
Yeah, so limited business, I'm assuming that we're talking, they can have some kind of businesses on the first floor and not above, is that the limit? And is the next block also limited business? Is the entire, from Elm Street up to?
There's I would have to look at a map. I believe Business Limited is on Dwight Street up down to Elm, the properties that are facing Dwight Street. Oddly enough, I don't know how this happened, but the post office itself and the vacant land in front of it across the street are actually downtown residential. That's something that should be looked at and changed. That should probably be downtown business. Just the post office is not a residential building, it's an institutional building. And if we ever wanted to see something of, some mixed use development on a half block, probably DR isn't where you would start in front of your park. So yeah, just the quirks of Holyoke zoning.
Counselor Tommy, you want to make an editorial comment there about the post office being zoned?
I'd be happy
The zoning?
that zone.
And it wouldn't really affect the post office. It's just weird that the post office is zoned downtown
I
residential.
mean, if we change regulations, we could certainly have some mixed use in that building then, couldn't we?
But that's what happens when you just blanket change all zones and don't tell people.
Counselor, thank you. Thank you, Counselor McGivern. That's 41 years of experience right there. Almost, Joe, not quite yet.
Not quite. Finishing for it.
You're getting there. Well, we can have fun with this. Okay, anybody else? All right, well, thank you, guys. I'm glad we're gonna get this, well,
I make a motion that we declare the property surplus at 712, 716 Dwight Street.
Second that.
motion made and second to declare surplus. Just under discussion, this would require a 2/3 vote at city council. True, Marcos?
Correct, surplus vote. Declarations that require 2/3 majority.
2/3 vote, so just good to keep that in mind. Hearing, seeing no other hands raised up on the motion to recommend approval for surplus. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? None. All right. Very good. Thank you.
If it please the chair, may I ask a question? Item number 6 is a letter from the mayor regarding these sales. I didn't know if you needed staff for that or not.
No,
Okay.
no, not at all. No, that's a communication. We'll just, actually, why don't we just take up, I don't want to receive it.
Item 6.
Yeah.
Motion to
take up
receive.
item 6 off the table.
Motion made, second, take up item 6 over the table. All in favor? Aye. Item 6, communication from the mayor dated 11/14/19 regarding proposal for city. I have the letter, I know. Yeah, Ryan always puts it here. Yeah, it's regarding 47 Chapin as well as 229 Beach, 2 James, and 2 Vernon, which we'll take those up in January, for sure. Okay, so I'll take a motion to receive it.
Motion to receive.
Motion made second to receive, all in favor? Aye. Okay,
Thank you.
so we took that up. All right, so that's that one. I'll just note that on here. Now, I'll take a motion to take 5 off the table.
Move to take item number 5 off the table for
Motion
discussion.
made second, take up item number 5 off the table. On the motion, all in favor? Aye. Ordered that the Director of the Housing Authority, Mr. Mainville, please come in, and the Superintendent of the DPW, Mr. Parent, appear before the committee to discuss plans to improve snow removal in the narrow paved alleys in the Churchill Homes section of the city. These paved alleys lead to backyard driveways for some homeowners, and plowing needs to be done to remove the snow from blocking access to the gated areas. So, gentlemen, thank you. Council Murphy.
Yeah, first of all, thanks, Matt and Bob, for coming down, and I learned something new here. I've had some concerns from constituents that don't have their driveways from the street, but have their driveways from the alleys. And then they have gates that ended up getting blocked in, and I've been told that actually the gates that they have were something that they built on their own. And that was new, that was not mentioned to me by the people concerned. But I still think it's an issue, and I know we're talking in the redevelopment and revitalization of South Holyoke to also having driveways that you access through the alleys. So I do think it's an issue. I did look, and I drove through a couple trying to figure out if we plowed one way, it would go away from the driveways, and if we go the other way, we're plowing right into the driveways. And so I would encourage that we take a look at which way we go through the alleys. I'm assuming they're all one way or the other. But when you're on there, no one else is going through. So if we could go through and take it away, because I think, and I could be wrong, but I tried to go through the alleys, that all of them are so that you could plow the snow away from their driveways and allow them to get their gates open if that is in fact an issue. But the other concern, and I know I've had some conversation with Bob in the last couple of days about ownership of the alleys and who's responsible, and I know the Housing Authority has been good trying to maintain those alleys in the Churchill home, so I thank them for that. But again, with that said, if and I don't really know the legal aspect of this, but if in fact a homeowner does not go and plow their part of the alley, I mean, I know they have to cleared a walkway, but does somebody legally have to clear an alley? Has anyone ever, I've never heard of anybody going to clear an alley until you guys told me you do it.
Yeah, so this is talking clearly from a non-professional attorney.
That mic's on, right, Matt? The light. Thank you.
So my understanding is that the homeowner that owns up to the middle of the alleyway is responsible for the care of that particular alleyway, whether it's trash, snow, et cetera, et cetera. So my understanding is that they do have the obligation. In the particular instance we're talking about now, the housing authority, although it's not an obligation of ours, does in fact plow the alleyways in question. I think in the future we can try to be a little more observant of where we're plowing it, but unfortunately, in the alleyway between Jackson and Franklin, there are homeownership units on both sides of the road that have driveways off the alleyway. So it becomes very difficult in the situation between Hampshire and Franklin. And move further away. That being said, the homeowner is then still responsible, like any homeowner in Holyoke, to remove the snow from the end of the driveway. So we will make every effort to ensure that we do this in the most cautious way we can, but at the end of the day, the homeowner still owns some responsibility.
And I do appreciate that, and I'm sure, I mean, again, I looked and I thought quite a few of them could be done that way, where you're moving it away, but I know there are some cases where you got both sides and you have no choice. But again, now looking towards South Holyoke and how we're planning that, and again, I do have concerns that if all the driveways go through the alleys and the alleys aren't done, then I'm expecting those people are gonna park on the street again, and we're back to the same situation where we have, Bob and I were just talking about a layout on some of the streets down there for that we're gonna be, with not enough parking on the street, and or the street's not getting plowed as well. So, I mean, I don't know an answer, but I think it's something we need, before we keep encouraging, and one of the things I suggested was maybe we don't go all the way to the alley, we give a little bit of space so that the homeowner's property actually doesn't get plowed in as much, and maybe a little better opportunity to just drive off. But I do think it's an issue, and I know what we're trying to do, and I appreciate what we're trying to do. I just want to make sure whatever we do puts us in the best situation and doesn't create another issue that we have to deal with down the road. But
I think the point that you made prior to the meeting made a lot of sense to me, and that we should be providing education to those folks that are installing their own fences and gates on the alleyway, that they should probably be inward moving versus out. You may have the opportunity to clear the space and gain access. However, if they, and again, they were all installed by the homeowner themselves.
Mhm.
I did recognize that there are some that outward, where it becomes problematic. But again, I think those are educational things that we want to trial and error. So we'll make sure that in South Holyoke we impart that information to folks.
yeah, I do appreciate that, and again, I appreciate the fact you're coming down and recognizing that you do have homeowners there that have that concern, and they were just trying to find some way of alleviating some of the blockage if they could. And I think if you can direct the plows a little differently, probably most of those are going to be satisfied. And I know they appreciate all that's been done and the home opportunities that they have. So I do appreciate that.
Yeah, we'll definitely be aware of it anyways.
Anyone else? Council Sullivan?
This is, for either of you care to answer this. Just snow plowing in alleys seems a futile attempt, no matter what you try to do. minor snowstorm, it might be okay. It sounds like we've got more of an equipment problem, whether it's the city's problem or Holyoke Housing Authority's problem. It seems to me the only way to do it would be either with a snow blower, a front end loader, and a dump truck and hauling it away. Would you say that's
Again,
more, I mean, if we were really serious about addressing the issue,
Even just the Churchill experience, I can say that's an affirmative thing. Between, like I said, between Franklin and Hampshire, we were lucky enough to abut the backside of the church parking lot and a vacant lot, so we could angle our plow and move it that way and not disturb any abutter. However, you jump over to Franklin and get between Franklin and Jackson, there's those condos that are on the left-hand side, the daycare center. You have 4 or 5 homes, and homes on the right-hand side. So if we angle it one way or the other, you're putting a onus on one or the other of the abutters. So it does become a lot.
I'm very familiar. I grew up in the Churchill neighborhood, and we used to have a great time sledding in those alleys, flying right across the street, avoiding traffic and into the next alley. So, but I think it's, as much as anything, the only real solution to this problem is an equipment problem.
Council Murphy?
Again, I think I'm right, Bob, you correct me if I'm wrong, but I do think one of the things that in the South Holyoke project, as I understand it, there's a possibility, I mean, I know when I grew up, alleys were just dirt and potholes all the way through it, and the garbage got thrown in there. But as I understand it, potentially, most of the alleys are going to be paved. Am I correct on that, Bob?
that is our plan and the concept at this point, yes. If I can add, and I really wanted to reinforce what Matt said at the very beginning, and actually I confirmed this with Bill Fuqua just to see what past practices has been, because as you know, my time with the city hasn't been that long. The city does not own the alleys. Alleys are owned by the abutting property owners to the center line of the alley. The city doesn't today, and historically during Bill's tenure, did not plow the alleys because it is not city property. And I, just to do a little bit of research to make certain that what my understanding was is what is actually in the land records, just as an example, I pulled up the records for 63 Franklin Street, which is in between Elm Street and Chestnut, and confirmed when the property was transferred originally from Holyoke Water Power to Holyoke Housing Authority at that point, who owned the property, took on the responsibility for keeping the alleys free of any obstructions. It's written right into the deed. When Holyoke Housing Authority then sold that property to the current property owner, that requirement to maintain the alleys free of any obstructions was transferred to the new owner of the property. So what I understood the case was, in fact, is exactly what the land records indicate, which is the property owners own to the center of the alley. Each property owner has an obligation to maintain and keep that alley clear. The alley is there and available to what was originally Holyoke Water Power Company, but to the city to put utilities in, but that's the extent of the city's responsibility.
I'll make them, if I can make a motion that the order has been complied, well, I'm sorry.
Oh, just 1 second, Councilor McGivern has a question.
Just kind of more of a comment, Bob. The alleyways have never been plowed, and I understand the abutters' responsibility in owning half the alleyway, but the city does control the alleyways, and they maintain an easement nowadays mostly for public safety. Originally, the alleyways were used for both trash pickup and a separate garbage pickup, and for a number of vendors who went down the alleyways selling their products. And, they were never paved, although they were always leveled. And the city used to use a grader to pick up trash, would level the alleyways. A truck that would follow the grader itself. And that would be in lieu of plowing, that would actually take care of the snow during most snowstorms. But did you say we're gonna pave all the alleyways?
No, it's in a project that's being developed right now, subject to the availability of outside.
Why would we be paving anything because many of butters have asked us to pave alleyways and we've always said no.
This would be as part of a public-private investment in South Holyoke. That part of that project would be potentially, if parking was going to be constructed by Holyoke Housing Authority off of the alley, that access to that parking would be paved.
Matt, is this project going to be on the tax rolls? That's a definite now. There was a question about that for a while.
Yeah, I think certainly a good portion of it will be homeownership and will be on the tax rolls. There will be some that will be rental, some market rate, and affordable housing. So there's some question about what that relates to pilot or on the tax rolls.
Because, I mean, I think that's the key. If we're paving alleyways, I'm sure it's a good project. I'm sure Councilor Murphy will agree. But if we're paving alleyways for something that's not on the tax rolls and we're not paying alleyways for property that is on the tax rolls, I have an issue with that.
The way the project is being developed right now, if those alleys were to be paved, they would not be paid with city funds. They would be paid for by an outside source of funding.
And, I think that as we continue to evolve the project, we'll clearly keep that in mind based on, market, what we're talking about is of ownership versus rental, those type of questions, but I think it's a point.
We have more than our fair share of affordable housing. The Housing Authority does a wonderful job. Affordable housing is there not all by design, but we have it. And I don't think creating affordable housing is something we need to do. Maintaining it, absolutely. And putting as much back on the tax rolls as possible will make this city a lot more economically healthier in the long run. And I think we have to all be aware of that. What's sad is we have property that has been taken over by the state, apartment buildings that are now family shelters, with families being sent from Boston into Holyoke. I think the message is very simple. Enough is enough. And if we don't start thinking about making this community fiscally sounder, then we're going to be nothing but one big housing unit for the entire state. Because it makes no sense to me why we keep adding affordable housing and why Lyman Terrace wasn't torn down is beyond me. But fine, I won't do my editorial comment on that one. Councilor Bartley, I apologize to the committee. But, we've got to take a stand, and we've got to get more property. We're talking about vacant properties in reasonably good neighborhoods that have been, milked, by prior owners, the city having to take it in tax title, and now we're doing RFPs to try to get them back on the tax rolls. I think this partnership has got to be about getting property on the tax rolls and making this city more solvent as it once was.
Councilor Murphy.
In response to Councilor McGivern, and I've been advocating the same thing. I do think everything I have seen, I've been at 3 or 4 meetings with the Housing Authority, the Planning Board, in terms of the revitalization, that a vast percentage of the units will be individually owned. And yet there may be some incentives to get a diversified income diversity in South Holyoke, which I think would then be beneficial to potentially offering some smaller businesses opportunities on Main Street, Gabbard Street, which right now they don't have. It's my understanding, and one of the other parts that is being reviewed, and to my knowledge, and you correct me if I'm wrong, we're still working through the plans. We've got ideas as to what we're looking at doing, and individual homeowners right on Clemente by Vega Park, down Sargent Street, some on Southeast Street. I think we're talking one apartment building complex on Hamilton and Southeast Street, and then some additional housing potentially down on Southeast on Sargent and down towards Adams. So a good portion of it is individual housing and ownership, the taxable. The question with regards to the alleys, as I understood it, the goal is to make it a nicer community neighborhood. And so we're trying to get some of the parking off the street. We're trying to do some enhancements to the park to make the quality of life a little bit better and not quite as dense in terms of parking and population. And that's the goal, as I understood it, of the parking being in the alleys and having paved alleys to provide that parking.
Yeah, I think, having heard through the course of many public interactions, parking continues to be an issue. I think the day and age of one car per household, or sometimes not even a car per household, are no longer here. We're stuck with the reality of more than 2 cars or more cars per household. So one of the thoughts to alleviate the restraints of parking was that we would put some parking off the alleyways. Allow people to the freedom of their cars, but at the same time, streets. So I think that's accurate. And we talked about what we're going to do with the streets as it relates to the streetscape and narrowing of it and pedestrian common. And I think you're right, we have progressed fairly well down the road about what we're looking at. Unit mix, so we're excited about where we are, where we're going. You know, the conversation continues to come up about how you create income diversity and what affordable and numbers of handle the saturation of market rate housing down there. So we're doing a market study and all that. So it's not completely baked, but we're moving towards a more.
So I'll make a motion that the order has been complied with, and I do want to thank both of you for coming down, and I think it helped also to start to think about the next project and where we need to make some adjustments and also some concerns that are out there. So I do appreciate.
Second that, on the motion, motion made and seconded that the order's been complied with, and discussion, hearing none. On the motion, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye, okay. All right, thank you, gentlemen, very,
Thank you,
very
gentlemen.
much.
Thanks, Matt. Thanks, Matt.
Okay, we've taken up item number 6, and now we're gonna go to a continuation of a public hearing from the last full city council meeting. So if I can get a motion to take numbers, well, it's up to the committee, of course.
Take them as a package.
We have 2 items that are both public hearings, so I'll accept a motion to remove them both, to suspend the rules, take them from the table, and to reopen the public hearing.
Motion to reopen both public hearings?
Second.
Suspend the rules, take them as a package. I hear motion made and seconded. On the motion, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye, okay, the public hearing, this is from a continuation of a public hearing from December 3rd, and both these are, I'll just read them. Petition from Verizon requests permission to locate poles, wires, cables, and fixtures, including the necessary anchors, guys, and other such sustaining and protecting features to be owned and used in common by your petitioners and across the following public way or ways, including Harvard Street. Place 1 solely owned pole, number T6S, on the northerly side of Harvard Street at a point approximately 173 feet easterly from the center line of Pleasant Street. Item 8, petition for joint or identical pole locations for Verizon and Holyoke Gas and Electric Department. Request to locate poles, wires, cables, fixtures, including necessary anchors, guys, and other such sustaining and protecting fixtures to be placed in used or common by petitioners along and across the following public way or ways. Jarvis Ave, place 1 jointly owned pole, numbered, etc., on the westerly side of Jarvis Ave at approximately 518 feet northerly from the center line of Old Bassett Road. Okay, if I could have Verizon come up to the microphone again. And, okay, so welcome back. It's my understanding and I may be wrong, that item 8 may not be as controversial as item 7. So I'm thinking that's probably true, since I don't see anyone here, and we didn't have anybody here at the December 3rd meeting relative to item 8. So I would be of the opinion that we should take item 8 up first and perhaps dispose of it as best we can with a vote tonight, unless somebody else wants to say something else. But why don't we just, if you just introduce yourself and your title, and why don't we sort of skip item 7 for right now? We've got item 8 before us, and why don't we just refresh our memories as to what's happening with the issue, with the polls on Jarvis.
My name is Paul Davis. I work for a company by the name of Pike Telecom. Their contract is for Verizon. I represent Verizon on their behalf.
I don't think, Paul, I'm not sure if that mic's on. Just click it on if you would.
Okay.
Okay, so we have Paul Davis from Pike Telecom, and Pike, and Mr. Davis is, Pike Telecom is a contractor for Verizon, and Mr. Davis indicated that he's representing not just Pike Telecom, but Verizon tonight. Is that true, Mr. Davis?
That's correct.
Okay, so, and what we said to Mr. Davis is that we would like to take up item 8 first before we get into item 7. Mr. Davis, if you would proceed with item 8.
Okay, in regards to the petition plan, poll number T30-01E7-01, there is a poll currently in that position where that proposed petition plan poll is. That current poll is a private property trespass situation. So if the property owner could have the poll moved onto city property, he would like to have that done if possible. The pole currently is 11 feet from the edge of the road. We would like to move it 8 feet towards the road, thus being 3 feet off the edge of the road in city space. So that's basically the objective of the petition for that particular pole. Again, to get it off of private property, a private property situation.
Okay, so it's really neat terminology, so I'm just gonna sort of just drill down into it so I can, well, learn something, but I can try to explain it a little bit better. So that would what I'm gonna ask you. So it's a private property trespass situation. So the pole is on someone's private property?
Correct.
Okay, and Verizon, oh, it's your word, Verizon, well, whoever put the pole in trespassed?
Correct.
Okay, and we're trying to alleviate that situation completely.
Correct. Verizon is trying to alleviate that situation, right?
Okay, and just so I'm clear, Mr. Davis, the pole is now 11 feet from the edge of the road, and the road being, are we talking Jarvis or Old Bassett?
Jarvis Avenue.
Okay, so it's 11 feet from Jarvis
Correct.
Ave, right? Okay, now, we being Verizon, they want to move the pole, there are no sidewalks there, right? So where are we moving it?
8 feet closer to the edge of the road. So in the end, the pole will reside 3 feet from the edge of the road. Let me be more specific. The petition pole will be 3 feet from the edge of the road.
All right, and now what is a petition pole? Is that's just what we're calling this pole, because since we're petitioning, is that where we're?
Correct.
Okay, all right. All right, so we're just moving it 8 feet, and by moving it 8 feet, it takes it off the private property owner's property, it puts it onto public property.
Correct.
True?
Right.
And I think we asked this the other night, but is that taxable when it's on public property?
As far as I've been told, when it's on public property, no. If it's on the street, and I think you mentioned it was public property, yes.
Well, right, so when it's on private property, not taxable.
Correct.
When it's on public property, taxable.
Correct. That's what I've been told, yes.
Right. 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 And there's a big case, so Verizon sued all these cities and towns and all the rest of that, and shocker, they lost. I can't believe it. But, you know, all these cities and towns had to put all this, assessors had to put all this money in, what's it called, Joe? In reserve? We don't call it reserve, but there was another word for when the assessors.
Overlay?
Overlay, thank you. That's 40 years of experience right there, Mr. Davis. In the overlay account. But then, you know, good grief, we didn't have to pay the money to Verizon. So, how about that? And I think that was quite a healthy sum, if I remember, but I don't remember what it was exactly. Okay, well, we are in a public hearing. Does anyone from the public want to address Old Bassett, Jarvis, the petition poll? I don't hear anyone say from that. Do any counselors want to address Old Bassett, Jarvis?
Quick question.
This is on Old Bassett, Jarvis, Councilman
Yes,
McGivern.
yes. Real quick.
Councilman McGivern.
Mr. Davis, who's the property owner? Is it the house right at the corner?
Oh, do we have to mention the name?
81 Jarvis Ave.
Oh, okay, just, we don't need to mention the person's name, right?
Yeah,
Yeah,
No, just the property.
yeah.
okay.
Because, I mean, those lines are pretty straight up there. Is it just kind of fluke work goes into the property?
Say that again?
The lines, the poles are pretty straight up there. So
I
where it
believe-
enters the private property, is it just the property line, kind of a fluke?
Well, when you say the pole line's pretty straight, the main line is across the street from this particular location. So this particular pole is a service pole across the street from the main line, is the best I can explain it.
I see it.
So if you know the area, there's the restaurant across the street. I think
Yep.
it's Slaint Restaurant, whatever it is. The main line is on that side of the street, and this pole is on the opposite side of the street.
Okay, I see it. Thank you.
Now, just so I'm clear, who moves the pole? Does Verizon or does your company, Pike?
Verizon moves the pole.
They do.
Yes.
So okay, so a Verizon crew will be in Holyoke, Mass, taking the pole out of the ground and moving it 8 feet to another location, a Verizon crew. Is that a true statement?
As far as I know, yes.
Right, yeah, so Verizon crews with their trucks and their hard hats and all the rest of that, act physically, enter the municipal boundaries and come in and do work.
As far as I understand it, yes.
Right, yeah. Not amazing? Amazing? So, I mean, I'm gonna vote for this in approval. It's just,
I think there's a trick to it, Mr.
There is.
Counselor
no,
Bartley. There's half the poles in the city are owned by Verizon, half the poles are owned by the gas and
That's not
electric.
I do
That's
know
what I'm
that.
saying.
Okay,
I do know that.
I wasn't sure.
No, so where I'm getting,
There's 20 years of experience.
I'm getting at that, I'm getting to that, but what I'm saying is that we know Verizon's here, obviously I know that, I'm being somewhat facetious, but it would be nice if when they're here, they could maybe take on some of the myriad other requests that have been mentioned over the course of many years. For example.
That would be something you have to bring up with Verizon. I have no control or power over that.
Mr. Davis, I realize, and you're but the pawn in this whole big chess match. I realize that, and really, you've been a gentleman the whole time, and I do appreciate that. But you said yourself that you are representing Verizon. You said that when you first walked in, came up to the microphone.
That's correct, and
So-
and you mention this every time I come here,
Yeah.
and I have the same answer every
Yes.
time I come here.
Yes.
And it's been several times that you've mentioned that. And
Yes.
I have mentioned that to Verizon, and it's just an ongoing issue, so that's all I can say about that.
And it is state law, by the way.
I'm not a lawyer, so I can't speak to that either. So you'd
Oh,
have,
but-
again, this is an issue you'd have to bring up with Verizon. I'll say it again.
Let me rephrase it. With whom in Verizon should I bring it up?
Albert Bissett,
Oh, well, that's our friend. Yeah, he's the best. He's a former Holyoke solicitor.
Yeah.
Real gentleman.
Yeah. Yeah.
I have a cell phone.
it's good.
All right, Mr. Davis. Okay, Council Tomlin, do you have a question?
No, I just stated that, I mean, it states that Holyoke Gas Electric too, and I know several times that there's poles being moved. The gas electric actually drills down and puts the poles up, so I'm not saying it's gonna be Verizon. It could be the gas electric, because they have, the equipment to do that, so that's just my point.
All right, we asked the public if they want to address this on this point. I don't see anyone raising their hand from the public. I'll take a motion to close the public hearing for item number. Oh, wait a minute, Joe. Let me just take a time off for sports here. Joe, should we close this public hearing or should we continue to the full city council?
You opened it as one hearing.
Yeah.
So you can vote on this item and then explain it if you're not gonna close the full public hearing, you can vote this item out separately.
Yeah, I think we should continue this to, we should continue this one to December 17th. That'd be my opinion. My opinion is we should continue this, we can close the public hearing at full city council December 17th. But I mean, if we close the public hearing here and we move it to December 17th, that's what I'm asking. I know Joe's not a lawyer and I'm not, and I am, but this is a really peculiar area of law.
Can we just vote on this one here and then close it after we finish number 7?
I think what we
Separate
ought to
vote?
do is, I think we ought to just vote on this one right here and get this up to full city council. But the question I'm raising is whether we should close the public hearing on item 8 now. I mean, I could go either.
I think it's harmless to keep it open.
I think it's harmless to keep it open. Yeah, that's what I'm saying. Yeah. But the other council members, okay. I mean, because what if somebody came in from old I mean, geez, then we'd really be caught off guard, wouldn't we?
Yeah.
But they obviously received notice, and
Right.
clearly they want the thing off their lawn. But I think we should. So that's my recommendation. So my recommendation is that we should vote to recommend this to be approved to full city council, but yet we should also vote to continue the public hearing to December 17th at 7 PM.
I'll make that motion.
Okay, motion's made
Second.
and seconded, as stated aforesaid. On the motion, all in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? None. Okay, so item 8 goes forward with recommendation for approval on item 8. Okay, let me just write down my notes because it's just not gonna.
Ask a question of the chair.
Councilor Sullivan.
So, once we vote this out, then we've got the number 7 to deal with, right? Depending on the outcome of that, it might be possible to close the public hearing on both items. Am I wrong on that?
So your question could be answered this way. We can always vote to reconsider our action within the meeting that we're here, while we're here. If we close this meeting and walk out the door, then we can't do that.
Right,
Okay?
okay.
All right. So that being said, item number 7. All right, so item number 7. We heard from Mr. Davis extensively on this on December 3rd. I'd rather hear from the public right now, because I think there are members from the public that are here on this issue. So, we are in a public hearing, we already stated that. This is the time now. Gentlemen, what's your pleasure? So, okay, so, before you do that, Mr. Healy, and Mr. Hoy, so, you know, because this is a little different. Normally, the best way is just to address me, but if we have questions for Mr. Davis, then, you know, there's a little back and forth type deal, because we might have to do, I'm even tempted to have Mr. Davis come in here, but why don't we just keep everybody outside the rail for right now? So, Mr. Healy, why don't you, or Mr. Hoy, either one of you wants to go first, why don't you explain what the issue is? Yeah, why don't you explain, so.
Good evening. My name is Dave Healy, 2 Harvard Street. I did not have the benefit of being here the last meeting, and I'd like a brief overview of presentation, a discussion of what is being proposed, and an update. We've seen some activity in the neighborhood this week, so
Oh, okay.
if we could get an update, that
Then
would
we'll
be
do that. Mr. Davis?
Okay, today's update, and I will read it verbatim as I was given communication this afternoon in regards to this petition. Petition for Verizon job number 1A3X5VD, Harvard Street, excuse me, solely owned pole T6S. Notice of petition to withdraw. Dear Miss Murphy McGee, Verizon New England, Inc. hereby withdraws the above referenced petition. Please remove from the docket of the City Council. Your assistance is greatly appreciated. Mr. Albert E. Bissett.
That's our buddy.
That's correct.
Okay. Well, that's quite an update. Okay. So, geez, Mr. Davis, you're just filled with information today. This is, that's what you do.
I'm here for.
That's what you're, okay. Okay. That being said, so Mr. Hoy, Mr. Healy, you're good to go?
We're good to go. Yep,
All right.
thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Hoy. Thank you, Mr. Healy. All right, so that being said,
Reconsider
well, it probably would make sense. So,
Thank you.
but the question would be, there's probably no need to have either one of these public hearings open. Do you think there's a need?
it's all over.
I think it's all over, right? Yep. All right, so, I'll take a motion to reconsider our prior action.
Motion to reconsider.
Motion made and second to reconsider prior action, and discussion, hearing none. On the motion, all in favor? Aye. I'll take a motion now to,
Motion to close the public hearing on items 7 and 8.
Second.
We gotta vote on 7 first.
yeah, we took them as a package, we can vote them as a package. We suspended our rules. So motion is made and seconded to close the public hearing for agenda items 7 and 8. Under discussion, hearing none. On the motion, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye. So public hearings are closed for 7 and 8. Why don't we take up item 7 and we'll take up item 8. So agenda item 7 is a motion to accept the withdrawal of petition from Verizon from number 7.
Wouldn't it just be a motion to deny?
Yes.
Why do you have to deny it?
It said withdrawal, yeah.
Why don't we just accept the withdrawal?
Motion to accept the withdrawal, yeah.
I just want to hear what Council Sullivan, what's the difference? I mean, there's nothing to deny, they withdrew it.
Okay.
Okay, all right, motion made and, was it seconded?
Second.
Okay, motion made and seconded to accept the withdrawal for agenda item number 7. On the motion or discussion, hearing none, on the motion, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Did I say that right, or did I say it backwards? Councilor Murphy, you were...
I'm just trying to, because the
Well,
petition,
the time off for sports, let's make sure you do it right. So,
I thought we could only approve or deny.
yeah,
I didn't think
because
we
that
could accept-
petition was in front of us without,
well, now it's withdrawn.
but it's gonna be withdrawn in the next agenda. That's what they're doing. They're bringing that withdrawal request to the next city council agenda.
We drew it here tonight, though.
Well, right, we can accept that information here at committee, because we forwarded it, yeah, so we accepted that here, but that doesn't mean it can't be, I mean, so we accepted that,
I mean, we may be
So
willing
we're-
to
we're-
give
we're-
it
we're-
leave to withdraw rather than denying it. So in case they ever want to come back, they wouldn't be penalized, I think.
well, I mean, another city council can take that up when Verizon puts it forward, so I would say, I don't think there's anything to deny here, Councilor Murphy. I think but that's me.
I mean, I know we're not gonna do it, so that's fine. Just how we do it, and again, I'm not sure because we actually don't have an official withdrawal, because that's gonna be coming to our agenda on the 17th, so. I mean, either way, we're not doing it, so whichever way you wanna do it, I'm just trying to find a way to make it as clear as possible that we're not accepting it.
Okay. Well, do you want to make another motion?
Either
I'll make a motion, it's been denied. it'd be denied.
Second.
Okay. Oh, all right, well, okay, all right.
I just don't want to think that we're denying their refusal, withdrawal.
No, we're denying the petition.
It's the same end result.
Basically, yeah. Just kind of.
But again, what we have in front of us is the petition. We don't have the withdrawal.
No, we don't. but
We will have it.
It's stated here in the public meeting. I mean,
Yeah.
it's time taken.
Okay. You know what, it's a motion's made and second to deny the petition. We'll just explain it. It was made pretty moot because of Verizon's withdrawal, which we'll have before us that night. So on that motion, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Item number 8, I'll take a motion to
Second.
approve the petition,
Petition, yeah.
to grant a petition, whatever it is.
Yeah, the petition.
Second.
Motion made and seconded to grant a petition for item number 8. On discussion, hearing none. On the motion, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye. All right, so item number 8 is granted. All right, so that closes the books on that one. Agenda item number 9 is scheduling of the next DGR meeting.
Thank you, Paul.
Agenda item number 9, next DGR meeting. Boy, it's really tough. Why don't we, well, I don't think committee assignments will really be out until, so the inaugural's January 6th. We do have a few items in the jacket. I didn't want to make this item meeting longer than it is, and look, it's almost 2 hours now. So, I think January 20th is a federal holiday, so you can't do it that date. January 13th is a Monday. Let me just make sure I don't have my holidays mixed up. No, okay, so it's not a federal holiday. So, would you be available January 13th, which is a Monday? And that could be our last one as our committee.
Be a different committee for sure.
Could be different.
Different council.
Yeah, totally different. All right, January 13th?
Yep.
All right, January 13th it is. It's 6 o'clock? All right, final motion, please.
Motion
Adjourn.
Motion made, second to adjourn. On the motion, all in favor? We are adjourned. Thank you.